So Ujima Village literally was called that by a civil rights leader who I'm going to allowed to remain nameless. He gave this name to this project. But the project was to move black people and poor people into what was supposed to be more decent housing out of the Watts Willowbrook area and closer to a more middle income community like Compton, a working class community. But prior to Ujima Village being built, everybody knew that the land was a oil pumping station. How are you going to build housing on an oil field? You know, we knew even then that they used chemicals to process this oil, to bring it out the ground. So the question, we were powerless then to stop it. And when they built those projects and they put poor people in it, not only did it have the effect of creating more gang violence, more tension, new social, political, and economic struggles between a middle-class community and a created poor community, but it then got those people who lived in that created poor community very, very sick. And they didn't just begin to notice that they were sick, they began to notice they were sick back in the 80s. Many of my friends who grew up there are now struggling with cancers. It's a complete cancer cluster. And they say, well, we'll take care of the situation. Well, you should have took care of the situation back in the 70s when you were talking about building housing for black people on an oil field. That's when you should have taken care of it. But you tricked us then, and now you're tricking us now. You trick us because you keep making us think that your agenda is our survival. But reality is, the agenda for most of these black politicians and the agenda for most of these preachers is more money for them. They are the worst sellouts I've ever seen. I have watched as we look at Ferguson and we look at the outcome of what may happen for this young man who was slain. And we continue to hear black politicians get together and say, well, we need to stay calm. Well, why would we stay calm when our children are being murdered? And why didn't you get together and ask the police to stay calm? With all the black boys and girls that are being gunned down across America, all throughout our history here, when are we going to have a meeting of black politicians and tell the police they need to calm down? When are the police going to be crawled on the carpet for what is obviously nothing but racism disclosed as authority? We're not only under racial attack and political attack, we're under the kinds of attacks that are so subtle you don't see them, whereas you can take land that is putrid from the beginning, move a whole community of thousands of people there, and then allow those people to be almost annihilated because of the chemicals in the ground, and then when this comes to fruition, turn around and tell us that you're going to turn this once terrible field of suffering, which was Ujima Village, now you want to turn it into a horse trail? In other words, you want to make it some other kind of thing so that it can affect some other kind of people in the same exact way, instead of just stand up and say, listen, we did you wrong, we did it because you were black, and we had these black people standing here helping us get it done. They're responsible for what happened to you, and we need to pay you. But the system won't work that way, because the system is designed to defend itself. It's designed to not only perpetrate these kind of catastrophes, but then to turn around and defend itself from the catastrophes that it perpetrates. This is what we're dealing with, and we've been dealing with it for 400 years. This is a racist society. It executes power in its judgment because it has authority through violence. There's no thing in that Constitution that says I got to be under control. It's supposed to give me liberty. In fact, people that fought for that Constitution said, give me liberty or give me death. But when it comes to you, you can't have that kind of notion in your head. They can pollute the chemicals, they can pollute the water, they can pollute the environment with the threat of police violence, they can pollute you by starving you out, they can make one neighborhood fight another one, they promote gang violence. Yes, they do. These police promote gang violence amongst these young blacks. Then they turn around and arrest the killer and collect the body. If you start talking about controlling the resources in your community, if you start talking about correcting your community, well, guess what? Guess what? You gotta go. The water that's in Compton becomes the water in North Long Beach. The water that's in Willowbrook becomes the water that's in Watts. And we're still dealing with a master slave mentality. We're still dealing with a house Negro, field Negro mentality. We still have too many African Americans who are willing and ready so that their families can eat a higher slice of steak than your family eats bologna. They will sell you out so that they can live a little bit better, so that they don't have to deal with the catastrophe which is the black community. The Compton Unified School District, that was one of our schools, right? They just knocked it down for no good reason. Boom, we gonna knock this school district down. This school down. It's been down for about 12 years. Never built it back. So this was a community that just saw a school evaporate. So what reason did you have just to walk in and knock down a school? What did you know? You knew something. Why would you just take a property and just kill it? A school that belongs to this community. This community, all the people who lived here went to that school. So now, where do the kids go that come to this community and grow up here to go to school? Now watch this. This is the city of Compton. This is all water. This is all water tower. Okay? So they would have you to believe that whatever affected that is not affecting this. So this is our web. Now I want you to keep your eyes open, because what I'm about to show you is why everybody over here doesn't really realize that the people who are right over there and sick and in a cancer cluster have something in common with them, because it's the same water. Now let's walk. Hey old man, why you lifting like that? You'll notice that it's all torn up, correct? And it's torn up because when they came in here and tried to start covering what the problems were here, they came in and fixed these streets as fast as they could because they was changing the underground pipes. The same underground pipes that lead right to that. Okay? And no one understood why are county workers working in the city. What's up, young man? I know who you are.
I know, because I look just like my father, but
You're
older
a young
now.
man.
How you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, good, sir. How's everything all right? How's little Omar and Jasmine doing?
Good. I'm going to tell them you asked. Boy, you done got the beard and everything since I saw you.
I know. It's been a minute.
That's Khalid's son.
Oh, what's up, little brother?
That's Kamar's son.
Alhamdulillah. There you go. How's everything on your end, sir? I didn't want to catch all those.
Stay careful out here.
Right there. I was like,
Stay careful out here. Stay careful.
Yeah, you too now.
On your P's and Q's.
Oh, definitely.
Okay. What do you think that's hitting? What's that blue thing say? They couldn't even fix it right. It was just, see where that line leads to? See where it bends inside? And it goes down? It's going right over there where Eugenia Village. But it all's rolling down here. You understand? Because Compton is built on a slope. And as it flows down here, it picks up whatever chemicals and carcinogenics that are in the streets. What's up, brother?
What's up, big boy?
What's going on with you?
I was going to get some water and I seen you out here. I'm interrupting.
No. You buffing iron? You still buffing iron? What's going on with you?
Man, working.
Put your ear down. What do you hear? Now you understand? Okay, now watch this. If you go here, what signs? What color are those signs? They're blue. So that's the county, right? All right. So you see that line that went all the way down the street, then it cut over, and then it went back up? All right, it's going right to that park. But now let me show you the real hidden mystery. They don't even think Negroes even look this. The county. So what you have here is a secret, silent agreement that you don't tell on us and we won't tell on you. You see that address? All of these county addresses have 5 digits, but this property and that one only have 3, because Compton addresses are 3 or 4. So these 2 houses sitting in the middle of the county are owned by Compton. It's in Compton's jurisdiction. But why? Look right there. You got your answer. So you see, there's the school they knocked down, there's the water tower, and there's a line that's running right through here that's feeding water straight to that tower. You see? So if they try to tell you that the water that's in Compton is not infected by what happened over there, then they're lying. And then what does all that mean? That means that when you told black people, listen, you can buy a house in Compton in the 50s, and those black people start moving over there, they already knew the water was contaminated. They moved you into a contaminated community, and now they're about to move you out of it because they're going to industrialize it. But those of us who know better know that there's something strangely weird about 2 Compton addresses sitting in the middle of the county of Los Angeles. But then if you got a little hunkering, a little understanding about what these things are and what they lead to and what all these lines are trying to show you and why the sewers are set up right here and why they even have water trenches right here in your face. But you can't see them because you're too busy drinking 40 as a people. You don't understand. And those that do understand, they want them out of here. What's here that was over there? Fire hydrants. And if we go right back to where that line is, you'll see the exact same thing. If the water is no good, then what would any school district, having been notified that the water is no good, have to do to that school? They'd have to take the school down. But why didn't you tell these people? Because they couldn't afford to tell all these people who came here in 1948 that, oh yeah, we're gonna let you move into what used to be a white community. We're gonna let you live in a paradise called Compton. And the white folks pretend like, oh, we don't want y'all here. But you know white folks, you leaving for a reason. You know this water ain't no good. You going to Orange County. You gonna give us this and say, okay, now have your paradise in hell.
Did they know?
They also knew that I wasn't the kind of black man that was just gonna sit up and say, oh, okay, mum's the word. When you're dealing with environmental racism, you're dealing with billions and billions and billions of dollars. I haven't seen any empirical evidence, but because I was the mayor of Compton and probably the closest thing to a real representative for the people of Watts, because they identify with me. They didn't identify with the mayor of Los Angeles. They identified with me. They would come and tell me, hey, everybody in this place is getting sick. Now I had a friend whose wife, and he lived in Ujima Village, and she died, I think, at about 49 of complications. And I believe those complications was due to the fact that she'd been over there drinking that water and living in that land. I can't prove it because I'm not a physician. But I know that there's so many people who are sick, and I've spoken to these young brothers. They felt comfortable to tell me, Brother Omar, this is what's happening to us. What I know about it from being an elected official is, and growing up here and swimming in that swimming pool and, you know, having rock fights with the guys that went to that school, is that there was always something unusual about these 2 houses. Well, you see what's on the front end of this block? Those homes are built in the 50s. Okay? You can look at them. can tell when they were built, 40s, 50s. These homes here were built in the 70s. I know because my uncle lived in one. But when were these built? Where did they come from? Totally dissimilar from that and that. And then once again, you can look at each one of these addresses, 12925, and go on down all the way. Every one of them will be 5 digits, but these will be 3. And you won't find it anywhere else here. And the only commonality you will find with this is they're in a direct line straight to that water tower. The village was not a nice place. You talking about in the 70s, if you went to a party in the village, you better have your pistol. Because they try over there. Even though they were Bloods and my neighborhood was Piru, you know, they had their own ideas about how things should go. And so there was never a real deep connection to them in Compton, other than the fact that they had to come to school in the Compton Unified School District. So even when they came to school in Compton, they hung out with each other. They're Bloods, and if there's a fight with the Crips, they join in, but only on issues that affected them. So there was never any connectedness until when I become mayor. I grew up with them. I went to school with them, so I knew them, and when they had issues, they would come to me. Even though my jurisdiction stopped where I showed you, close enough to where they felt like I would hear them. And one of the complaints that they had constantly was that they were getting sick from the water. You understand? So it was not as though people were not aware of this issue. They understood it, but how do I address it as the mayor of Compton? And listen, in any environment where there are gangs or what have you, those who have the least amount of economic resources to deal with their problems are the ones that are going to be most affected by it. So were the people in Ujima Village poorer than the people in Compton? Yes. Were the people in the southern part of Los Angeles County poorer than the people in Compton? Yes. And everywhere where there were neighborhoods in LA County where the people had proximity to Compton, but their economics were different, those communities had far more crime and far more fierce personalities rising out of them. So it would be hard to connect with them. You see, if I'm a school district, then I am a what? I'm a government organization, I'm a state organization. So if I get a notification as a state entity that the water that the kids on your district, your school site is contaminated, then I got to get rid of that school, right? But if you were a conscience governor, then you would warn the people who's also drinking the water. But you only covering your ass because you are a state entity. So you knock all these schools down, right? And then as far as your paperwork is concerned, you took the proper. But a conscientious person would have said, if I'm the governor, well, oh my God, what about the people? The city of Compton has its own water company.
Right.
I said this to you earlier.
Right.
It is a revenue generating department.
Right.
In other words, in a normal government, the government cannot make a profit. But in a city like Compton, where you have a charter, then you can have a department in your charter that makes a profit. You understand? So the water that comes from our water department is our general fund, which is all the money that runs the town. So if you mess with the water, you will close the town. So do you think they're gonna tell that the only thing that's keeping all of us getting a check is no good? If you kill Mark Twain Elementary School, and then you kill 139th Street School, which are two schools that are technically on the same street, but only divided by the water line that goes up and down this street. There's the water line there. Then where do these children, for this whole swath of land, where do they go to school?
Street.
Where do they go to elementary school? There is no other elementary school, right? Yes, there is. All the way on the other side of that tower right there that you see, that's where the other elementary school is. So effectively, if you were a black family and you wanted to move over here, the first question you would ask is, where my son or daughter going to go to school? If the water that is going into the well is contaminated, then the well itself will pump water to the residents, and the water that they intake through your water delivery system then is contaminated. So you can't just go to Ujima Village and address the issue. You would have to address the issue district-wide, water district-wide, and that would mean that you have a what? A systemic problem. In other words, wherever water transversed that area, it also affected the people who lived here. And that's why I'm trying to show you the water line, because I got to tell you this, you can't physically do it. So what you're dealing with is a systemic problem. This is systemic. You can't go to the source of that problem now and address the problem in its totality. You would have to follow the path of this water all the way throughout Compton, all the way out throughout Willowbrook, even all the way to North Long Beach. But now, let me tell you how they dealt with it on the slide. They closed this school, and guess what they did next to the school? They put a waste dump. That's what that is. So there's a waste dump just on the other side of this once wonderful elementary school that served all the children in 3 or 4 different neighborhoods. But the 2 schools that served this entire region were both knocked down, and the community has never been told why. But if you went straight through that foliage, that's Ujima Village. And this is the water line. If you went straight through there, you'd run straight into where those projects are being torn down. That they get moving. They'll tear down schools, they'll destroy roads, they'll do whatever's next. This is actually a street in a modern California city. It is so torn up with potholes that it is testimony that the city fathers will do anything to yield to the will of these businesses. And if you look now, you see the beginning of the container trucks that are coming from the ports that are designed to go in industrialized communities, but these things are really sitting in neighborhoods. So instead of them correcting the issue with water, what they've decided to do is to depopulate the community and industrialize it, which is what I fought against when I was mayor. These containers, if you look at them closely, you'll see that the majority of them are coming from China and on their way somewhere else. Even including and up into. So in reality, what we have in communities like Compton, South Central Los Angeles, North Long Beach, all the way to Chicago, DC, Philadelphia, Harlem, is a culture of greed, a culture that permeates these large infrastructures of power, like governments, like churches, like officers of prosecution. And it allows for them to do whatever they wish to make so that the ruling classes continue to profit off the suffering of the poor. It's sold sometimes as racism, but what it really is a dire and desperate need to continue to live better than the masses. And this is why there's so much racism, or so much racism based on economics, and racism based on the ecology of a particular section of land that goes unchecked, because somebody's making a profit. So that when you say, well, you're doing this to us because we're black, yeah, you do it to us because we're black, because we can't fight back. But the real reason why you're doing it is because somebody's getting rich off the suffering of poor people. And you can find that constant anywhere in the world, that wherever there are poor people, there's somebody getting rich off of their poverty. And so when you say, well, why haven't they handled the water problem in Compton, in Ujima Village, in South Central Los Angeles? Well, it wasn't cost effective. That would be money just lost. But if there was a profit motive behind it, they'll spend whatever they need to spend to get what they actually want, which is more money. And to do this, they lined up every politician who's not stable down and not connected to the black community. They line up every preacher who's got to go along with whatever the sellout move is going to be. And that's what you have here. A bunch of sellouts who are unwilling to stand up and say that these brown and black people have been affected by this water, that this water is chemically affected, that it's toxic, and that people are getting sick and dying.
Going from, everybody knows that the water, don't drink the water. But now, getting an understanding of how everybody knows within the government, within all the people that's making money off of the people and off the city, that the water causes sickness and death. I didn't really know that I was a part of a genocide. I didn't know that Compton specifically was a part of a genocide, to where they don't care about us killing each other, and they don't care about them killing us via the resources. So, you really get upset. It's an eye-opener, now that it's been put all into the proper perspective. Really, it's crazy. I mean, I really believe this is by God that this is all happening, because I needed this light to be shined on me from my understanding. But I wish that people would understand what's going on with us. I want them to know how we being treated. It makes you real angry, man. And I mean, it's nighttime. We about to see it's peaceful now. Ferguson verdict, most likely. My man not going to jail. We about to see what the reaction is. Get out the streets of Compton before it go down, because I don't know. God knows best, man. God be with us, man. God give us paradise and get us out this place, that we have good food and good water.